A good smoky morning to you. We avoided it as long as possible, but this is Oregon summer for you. So let's say that I am out and about the community, and through conversation, I tell somebody that I am the assistant to the regional pastor out here at Murphy. That's an office joke. If you don't understand it, you're totally fine. So we're in conversation. I say that I'm kind of the number 2 out here. So they will naturally ask, well, who's the big guy out there? Who's the lead pastor? And I say, well, it is the Brian Lucas. And yeah, let's give him a round of applause. Why not? You guys know I like to be clappy. Right? So a few questions might follow up with that, but one of them is going to be like, so what's he like? And my response might be, well, dark hair, about 6 foot, beautiful facial hair, right? 3 amazing daughters, an amazing wife. He did construction. He's a pastor. He's a great break dancer. I don't know if it's true, but we should probably find out at some point. And so I've said all that stuff, and then their following question might be, well, that's really cool, but what's he like, right? So I have not told anything about his character. I have not said anything about Brian that is going to help this person understand what their experience would be. I go to the physical description. A lot of times we do that. We go physical description. We go to their accolades. Whatever our objective is, I might highlight his flaws if Brian has any, if I'm trying to tear him down. But if I'm really trying to beef him up, then I'm going to just really embellish in his pros. But none of those things that I have said might answer the following questions, which I think we subconsciously kind of ask ourselves when trying to figure out what the experience of a person might be like. They might be thinking, well, can I trust Brian? Is Brian somebody worth trusting? Does Brian lie? Does he lie often? Can I get away with manipulating Brian in a conversation? Can I get away with overpowering Brian in a conversation? That might be something. Or one question I kind of maybe try to figure out with people is, how do they react when I make them upset? Because that is something I tend to do often. I think those are questions that go through our head. The second interesting part of experiencing people is how you answer that question about, what are you like? Identify yourself. Who are you? What are you like? And then lastly, regarding that, you really have to check the source of which you are getting information when talking about experiencing people. Oftentimes, our experiences with people are figured out before we've even met them. I'm going to go ahead and give a thank you to Instagram for that one. But we have these people's lives dialed in before we have actually experienced them. Going back to what is Brian like, that question is going to be different if you ask multiple people. If you ask Ashley what's Brian like, she's going to give you an answer. If you ask his daughter Kiara what he is like, she's going to give you an answer. If you were to ask Allie what Brian's like, there's a different answer. A Twitter follower that follows Brian is going to give you an answer. And then lastly, Brian himself is going to give you a different answer. So we get the ideas from others' experiences before we have truly actually got to experience that person ourselves. I know you're asking, okay, cool, are we doing like a character analysis of Brian? What's going on? Although that would be very fun. I think that would be a good time. That is not what we're doing. But instead, we are going through an incredible passage in Exodus. I was talking to Josh Rios, who was up here earlier. He said top 3 passages, his favorite top 3 passages. So no pressure. I said, I hope I don't mess it up for you. But cool passages like this, I can't mess it up. This passage is powerful regardless of what I say. This passage is actually dubbed the John 3:16 of the Old Testament. It's one of the most quoted passages of the Bible by the Bible. It is here where we see this really cool exchange between God and Moses, where God reveals himself to Moses. Before we completely dive in, I want to highlight just a few things. Part of my research of this led me to this book called God Has a Name by a guy named John Mark Comer. I show you this book. This was a fantastic read. It was definitely one, I'm not a reader. That was an easy read, and it really helped me develop, challenge some thoughts that I had in my head. And I'm going to be kind of referencing that book a few times. So if you're sitting there wondering, well, what's this book? It's right there. It's called God Has a Name. He kicks it off with this question of who is God, highlighting this point that a lot of belief systems, spiritual belief systems, they are kind of focus their characteristics based on their perception of God. What you think about God will shape your life, regardless of what you think about God. He started it off with a really astonishing, and I almost think kind of a sad point, but it really kind of made me think. He says, who God is has profound implications for who we are. Here's the problem. We usually end up with a God who looks an awful lot like us. As the saying goes, God created man in his own image, and man, being a gentleman, returned the favor. There's a human bent in all of us to make God in our own image. So in chapter 34, we see a very raw reveal from God to Moses. Good news, after a quick compare and contrast, I kind of compared God's revelation of himself to me, and me and him are nothing alike. So I am super stoked because God is not like me. So our big idea today is that God will reveal himself to us through intimate, powerful, and personal relationship. In our passage last week, there was this exchange between God and Moses, picking up in Exodus 33, verses 15 through 18. And it says this, Then Moses said, If you don't personally go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favorably on me and on your people, if you don't go with us? For your presence among us sets your people and me apart from all other people on earth. The Lord replied to Moses, I will indeed do what you have asked, for I look favorably on you, and I know you by name. Verse 18 says, Moses responded, Then show me your glorious presence. NIV says, Now show me your glory, which is our title for our message today, Show Me Your Glory. I read that, I'm thinking, bold move, Moses, bold move, asking that or almost demanding that of God. So kind of continuing, even though that video did a kind of a great little recap, the Lord gives instruction to Moses to chisel out 2 new stone tablets to replace the ones that broke in the whole golden calf shenanigan that I believe Joe talked about a few weeks ago in Exodus 32. He said, head up to the top of Mount Sinai. The next morning, the Lord passes by, which is where we're going to dig into today in Exodus 34, verses 5 through 7. Verse 5, Then the Lord came down in a cloud and stood there with him. He called out his own name, Yahweh. The Lord passed in front of Moses, calling out, Yahweh, the Lord, the God of compassion and mercy. I'm slow to anger and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. I lavish unfailing love to 1,000 generations. I forgive iniquity, rebellion, and sin, but I do not excuse the guilty. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children and grandchildren. The entire family is affected, even children in the 3rd and 4th generations. It's at that time where the kids are like, Mom, Dad, I hope you were good, or else things are going to get weird. But it's here where we get this first person from the source, top-notch description of God by the number one source, God himself. Moses demands, show me your glory. God, show me your glorious presence. Identify yourself. Who are you? What are you like? God's response to Moses shows a firsthand experience of God's character and what his experience with God would be like. Which begs me to ask this question that we're going to be in today. How do we experience God? Does God resemble kind of some experiences, good or bad, from your past? Is God kind of what the preacher, teacher, or the educated transient on the side of the road tells you that God is, or what the YouTube video tells you God is? Kind of going back to that quote, is God the God you perceive an awful lot like you and me? Some things that I think we do, and maybe some of us have had similar thoughts, where we kind of start talking about things that God, of course, would or would not do. Obviously, God would never let somebody like that into his kingdom. Well, the God I serve for would never vote for fill in the blank. Not going to go there completely. Or, God is definitely not a Tiger Woods fan. Or, insert an athlete that you think doesn't deserve the things that we deserve. So a few looks into this idea of how we experience God pulled from this text. Our first note today is that God is a God of second chances. God is a God of second chances. If you've kind of been walking in a relationship with the Lord a long time, you know that this is not, you probably know that this is a quality of God. I think it's a quality I wish could be a lot better instilled in us. This is a quality of God. Kicks off the chapter, verse 1, right out of the gate. Then the Lord told Moses, chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones. I will write on them the same words that were on the tablets you smashed. Kind of a nice little dagger to the belly there in the end. Like, okay, I'm going to write the same ones on the tablets that, by the way, you smashed. Recall a few chapters earlier, we see Moses break these tablets in anger. 32 verses 19 and 20. When they came near the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing. Because they built this golden calf. Moses was gone for a little too long, so they're like, what do? Let's build an idol. It was a golden calf. Burned with anger, he threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them at the foot of the mountain. This is where things get weird. Verse 20, he took the calf they had made and burned it. Then he ground it into powder, threw it into the water, and forced the people to drink it. Which I have a meme up here that I've seen from the movie Dodgeball that reminds me of it. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. Just what a weird thing to do for Moses. But he was in extreme anger, smashed the tablets, made them drink the gold water. I feel like that would sell too. Gold water? I feel like it would, but maybe it's bad. So we see here initially that God is wanting to renew this covenant that was on the tablets. That is what he wanted to do. It's one of his first priorities, renew this covenant with Moses. It wasn't like, hey, blown chance, see you later. He wanted to renew it. But the cool thing is that God's not sitting there like, oh, honey, it's fine. Like, it never happened. We're good. We're just going to kind of sweep that one under the rug. I got a reset button. No, he says, I'm going to go ahead and do it just like, highlighting his consistency as God, just like the tablets we had before that you smashed. This isn't forgive and forget, which is kind of a motto I lived by growing up, but this is forget and move forward, which I think is a lot more healthier. Forgive and move forward. A few weeks ago, my friend Josh, not one of the 2 Joshes here, but my friend Josh came over and he helped me install these counters. How many of you have ever installed counters? Okay, I didn't until this moment. So I say he helped me, but more so, he did it. And every now and then I found it necessary to get in the way of what he was doing. But if you're putting counters in together, there's kind of the corner, there's these 4 bindings, what we were calling stitches, that kind of go, and they're little fasteners that you're going to put underneath in a really odd way and screw them in, and it helps underneath keep them fastened together. So we had it on the ground the way my kitchen was shaped. It was on the ground, and we were going to fasten them because it was easy that way, pick it up, put it on, boom, we were almost done. So we're lifting it, we're kind of laughing, having a good time. He's a fun guy, and one of the stitches or the fasteners breaks. It falls off, one of the 4. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, we're fine. We can kind of operate with 3. And I was like, whew, good, that's fine. A second chance. But then kind of the laughter subsided, and he looks at me and he says, but if we lose one more, it's game over. We're done. Right? And I'm like, oh, crud. Like, I'm sitting, all these fears going through my head. Well, that's a few $100s out the window. Rachel's going to be coming home. She's really expecting counters. I don't want to show her, like, hey, here's a hole. Like, I hope the hole is fine because we didn't get the counters in. But the fear that crept in reminds me of the fear that I don't receive as a follower of Christ. I'm not sitting here like, I hope I get like one more chance or else. It reminds me of the joy that we receive from this redemption that Christ has given us. Knowing my mistakes, my transgressions, my sins, they are redeemed through the blood of Christ. With Christ, it's not game over. In fact, it's game on. Kind of game on, not game over. We are moving forward. With the Israelites, I think they kind of reflect us a lot because we see God's redemptive mercy throughout Exodus with the Israelites. This isn't just a pass. It's not like, hey, you screwed up. Here's a freebie. Let me know in 30 seconds when you need another one. Okay? This is an opportunity for redemption to Moses, to the Israelites. God's second chances provide opportunities for fruit. They provide opportunities for growth, the opportunity to move on. For Moses, yes, and for us, heck yes, in our own personal lives. Learn from what you did and move forward. So God is a God of second chances. Moving on to our second point, and what I think is probably one of the more important ones around kind of the bread and butter of this passage, is that God reveals his true character to us. It's vitally important for a few reasons that this is, we kind of talk about this. Number one, we have a habit of misinterpreting, added extra letters in there, God's character for ours. As mentioned before, if I am kind of maybe filled with hate and anger, it's going to be, no surprise that the God I serve kind of seems to be, in my own perception, an angry one as well. We fail to see it. We're often looking for what we want to see and not what we need to see. That's probably my number one. We fail to see it. I have a very specific thing. I know exactly what God's trying to teach me. And he's like, well, it's weird because what I'm trying to teach you is actually this. I don't know what that actually is. And the last one is that we just fail to believe it. We fail to believe, I think, that we serve such a powerful God. I know I'm very guilty of often pointing out characteristics of God and then failing to live them in my own life. I just neglect it with my actions. I think from here, this very stage, I've said, the Lord provides. And then I lose sleep over the lack of money that I really wish I had and don't. Or God forgives as I continue to hold grudges throughout my life. Or God is faithful, yeah, right? And I believe that, but I fail to trust that he is actually answering or even responding to my prayer request that I submitted. What a weird word for prayer request. So in the verses that we just read, the Lord reveals his true character to Moses. God is kind of told by Moses, show me your glory, and God in his amazing ways, like, you got it, here it is. I've noticed that, and something I've said before, God's character is very countercultural. Kind of what we maybe are kind of immersed in or what we're surrounded by is very different than God's character. Not only is it opposite to what we know, it actually was opposite to what the Israelites knew as well, being under the Egyptian reign. So the gods that they would have been aware of were gods that were very temperamental, very angry, and you had to kind of earn their favor by sacrifices or doing different things in order for them to be satisfied until that process fades away, and then you need to do it again. This is an Egyptian culture, but I heard that in some Native American culture, the way to earn favor with a certain god was to take balls of butter and throw it at the statue, and that was how you earned favor. And I'm thinking that is a waste of good butter, but got to do what you got to do. So they think that, and then comes God. In verse 6, the Lord, or Yahweh, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. One commentary stated, it seems clear that the twofold occurrence of Yahweh, kind of repeating his name, emphasizes God's name, thereby causing the listener to pause and reflect on its meaning and the description that follows. So he's highlighting, hey, this is a very important conversation that we are about to have. You are with Yahweh. You are with the one true God. Now, stepping into a little unfamiliar territory, trying to understand literature a little better, the Hebrew text did this thing with their words sometimes, where they put two words kind of next to each other with the word and in between to kind of help emphasize or explain each other. The word, from my understanding, is called a hindiotis. Hindiotis. Say it with me. Hindiotis. I might be saying it wrong, but I don't think anybody will know. So I'm not going to kind of pretend to give you a bad English lesson, but what this did is, they were put together to emphasize or explain each other. We see this happening a few times with God's description of each other, and it's actually what he starts out with, this compassionate and gracious. Compassionate can mean merciful. It comes from a root word that's similar to the idea of a mother's womb, or the feeling that a mother has for her infant child. I use it described as a deep love, and I love, no pun intended, that idea, that expression of compassion. And then graciousness is to show favor, or obviously to show grace. Quick note from theologian Charles Ryrie that Christianity is distinct from all other religions because it is a message of grace. Jesus Christ is the supreme revelation of God's grace. Salvation is by grace, and grace governs and empowers Christian living. Without grace, Christianity is nothing. It was said that these two terms are often in the Hebrew text described referring to a stronger, superior being kind of performing this action or giving this grace towards a weaker person who has no claim for favorable treatment. In ancient texts, these words are used 13 times each, 11 together. The other ones are kind of references in the Psalms. Most of them referring to, again, God as the subject. So this is his opening line. This is kind of his first thing, with the idea that we really only listen to the beginning of something and then the end of something. He starts off with this. This is his opener. He kind of leads with the two qualities that he wants Moses to understand. This is who I am. I am gracious. I am compassionate. These words are very comforting. When I think of grace and compassion, I think of a very warm, loving person. But these words are also very, very, very powerful. If you have compassion, for deep love for someone, you are going to go to lengths that you are even unfamiliar that you could reach. I'm a fan of those kind of crazy stories that you might hear of a mother doing something that just seems physically impossible in order to save their child. I think we've all heard of the mom lifting up a V-dub beetle I don't know if that's actually true, but you hear those crazy things that moms are willing to do, and kind of reminded me some of those. There was a mother in Massachusetts who was the third story of a burning building, had an 18-month-old child with her. All of her options were out, so the only thing she thought she could do was hug her baby, kind of cocoon herself around her baby, and take a leap about 30, 35 feet out the window, protecting the baby from the landing. So she does it. They both survive. The mother lost the use of her legs. She was paralyzed, but she thought to herself, like, she didn't say, all right, well, it's either you or me, so I'm out of here. She said, nope, we're doing this, and if I don't live, you are going to, and protected herself. Other stories of a Canadian mother, which, I mean, stop right there, Canadian mothers, but fighting off a polar bear until her children, like, all right, kids, you got this, like, let's go, polar bear, long enough for help to arrive and help scare it away, and for the kids to leave. Other situations where tornadoes coming, so mothers use themselves as shields to protect their kids from debris, from falling stuff, from earthquakes. We hear these stories of this compassion, or what I like to think of as a very deep love for their children. This is kind of it's a love that I'm not a parent yet, fail to even comprehend of how you could feel that way, but there's that deep love, that compassion. Moving on now to the next one is slow to anger. Okay, the translation here is a fun one. Some of you may know this, but through all my research, it was pointing out that this translation in the Hebrew text would mean long of nostril. Okay, long, which I don't know. If I were to, yeah, exactly, Stephanie. I saw that face, and that's the exact face I had, like long of nostril. So a lot of you just imagined a God Pinocchio hybrid, and you're probably not going to be able to get that out of your head. But so you think about, like, when you get angry, obviously maybe you clench your fist, your chest gets tight, your blood pressure rises, and your nostrils oftentimes maybe flare. Ancient Hebrews said that somebody that was turning red, their nose turning red was a sign that they were getting angry. Therefore, the word nose and anger kind of became synonymous with each other. So if you didn't get anger easily, it was thought of that you were long of nose, or it took long for your nose to become red. So there they came with the term long of nose or long of nostril, slow to anger, long-suffering, patient. I think it's important to highlight this quality for one of the reasons that I don't know if a lot of us maybe believe that God is slow to anger. You're like, the God that hit the reset button on the flood, or with the flood, who brings his wrath, like, would be slow to anger. Some of us maybe even have a problem with that idea that God can have an anger, or what we would call a righteous anger in the first place. But it was pointed out to me, understand, if you were to kind of go back through the Bible, what is in the crosshairs of God's anger every time? And that is evil. God is angry when evil is present. I heard it put this way, that kind of his anger is his steady, unrelenting, unremitting, uncompromising antagonism to evil in all its forms and manifestations. That would kind of be the definition or the description of God's anger. The description of my anger when someone hurts my feelings, when I don't get what I want, when I'm not thought of first. But still, aside from me, God is long-suffering, God is patient, God is slow to anger. Kind of the last part, we're going into that word pairing situation again with the word that's hard to pronounce, where he goes into abounding in love and faithfulness. Abounding in love would kind of be an unfailing love, and the faithfulness could correlate to truth. And again, in this word, these two words are used to emphasize each other, to help explain each other. So in a way, God's love is his faithfulness, and God's faithfulness is his love. I heard it put in this way, it's called a loyal love, a loyal, unfailing love, speaking to the covenant that God made with his Israelites. So in ancient treaties, the term was used to describe kind of the aspect of a covenant relationship between kings and his subjects, or kings and his people. As a king was expected to demonstrate the loyalty to his people, so his subjects were expected to show the same towards their king. That love on the people's part suggested the loyalty, service, and obedience. That is the same term used to describe this loyal love. And I'm reminded of God's kind of powerful, eternal loyalty to us. So I think we forget that he is loyal to us. He's not loyal to us to a certain point. And I was trying to think, okay, what's the cool, physical description, man-made description that could correlate to God's loyalty? And nothing that we have can match that. I'm reminded of the Psalm 136, which might sound awfully familiar if you were listening during worship. Psalm 136, first 3 verses. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods. His love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. His faithful love endures forever. Now, if you look back in your life, you might find a point where you assumed the authority and you thought maybe it was okay to criticize God's character. If you're me, you don't have to scroll back very far where we kind of assume this position of kind of questioning what God is doing. Kind of that, oops, I failed here. Man, God, you let that happen. And I was thinking about that, and that's dangerously close to saying, God, you failed me. You failed the objective that we were supposed to be in together, God. It was almost like our physical pain, or to where we got to the point where we couldn't reach, was the finish line. All right, God, I'm going to give you this long for you to do something cool, but then, if it's not going to happen, if that pain is still going to be there, then I don't think you can cut it. I don't think you have the moxie. You have this long to prove your love, and then if it doesn't happen, then I'm going to try something else. I'm reminded, though, that in Exodus 34, where we're at, if you've kind of been following, this is a low, low point. We got people making golden calves. We got people drinking golden calves. Things are getting weird. Things are getting bad. This isn't that this was the middle of a really good point in Israel's life. This was a low point. It's in those low points where God's I'm just getting started. Things are just about to get interesting. I'm reminded of Joseph in Genesis, where his story kind of starts in the bottom of a well. Thrown in by his brothers. Jerk move on their part, but he's in this well. And at the end of the story there, he is given an opportunity to help those same brothers survive. Obviously, Job, the poster boy of perseverance and kind of patience through a really bad time. This reveals to me that God's love is faithful, and it is eternal, and it is abundant for us as his followers. This lasts far beyond our physical pain and torment. Much hey, this smoke and this heat won't last forever. At some point, there will be rain and it will be cold, and we will be complaining about that instead of the heat. So an interesting thing is that God's grace, his compassion, his loyal love will actually be applied to those darker moments of our lives, those darker moments of our soul. That is where this deep love is really going to come into play. It's then in our despair where God can really work and show us that true deep love. Moving through now, a lot of good stuff, and there will be things I'm skipping over, but it's not because I think they're unimportant. It's just that I would love to be able to touch on all these things before tomorrow. So moving on now, that God fights, in verse 14, for our hearts. You must worship no other gods, Exodus 34:14. For the Lord, whose very name is jealous, is a God who is jealous about his relationship with you. A lot of you are like, jealous? Like, I don't think God was a teenager. I'm not saying teenagers are the only ones that get jealous. We all get jealous. But you might kind of have a problem with that word. I want to unpack it for just a second. This righteous jealousy is in no way, shape, or form similar to the jealousy that we experience as humans. I heard it put a few ways, but one that I really liked was that he desires our full devotion and full commitment from us. He desires this full devotion and commitment from his creation, which he is fully devoted and committed to as well. His jealousy is this combination of his love, his nurturing, his intimacy, his desire for us. For us to fully and thrive in his relationship, he wants all of us, and he wants us to be able to experience and reach out to all of him as well. God doesn't love us like we're his pets. He doesn't love me like I love my dog, love my dog sometimes. He loves us like his children who are created in his image. I almost imagine, this is a very poor kind of analogy from my point, where you're walking across maybe a rickety bridge. We're talking worst case scenario. It's dark. It's stormy. There's debris falling. The bridge is bad. There's only a few spots you could step. There's people behind you that haven't experienced this bridge that are telling you what you should do. There's things falling from the sides. You can't even see the bottom. Yet, on the other side, okay, there's God, or if you want to keep it in the human realm, like your best friend who has been across this gap, and they say, eyes on me, like I can tell you where to go, I can tell you where to step, and the people behind you are clamoring and yelling, and he says, do not listen to them, focus, eyes on me, stop listening to them, don't look away, look at me, I can tell you where to go. Almost mad because of these distractions that are trying to pull us. He's saying, my voice and my voice only. Listen, I can get you across this rickety bridge. We listen to them across the bridge and we will make it. But if we get distracted by a falling tree or something that doesn't mind us, then we may be perished. He is jealous and devoted to have our attention. Not because he needs our friendship, because he so intimately desires it and loves us with this unshakable love that only he can provide. So when he's kind of speaking against other gods or idols, he's really saying, no other idols are worthy compared to me. No other idol can hang, or no other idol is me. Or no other idols are me. That sounded more grammatically correct. Josh Rios talked about this video that was from the Chronicles of Narnia, and it was such a cool depiction of how God kind of fights for us. So there's one of the characters is this young boy, and he commits this transgression. So the evil witch is coming, and she's like, he's mine, gonna serve under the penalty that I have for him. And then kind of Aslan, the Christ-like figure in this movie, the king, kind of comes up, and he takes the kid's place. He has a meeting with the witch. By the way, spoiler alert, the movie's been out forever, so I'm not gonna lose sleep. And so they come out of the tent, and she's stoked. Like, she's like, I just got, like, the deed to Aslan. Like, he's going to take this place. I'm going to kill Aslan. It's going to be sweet. Like, it was just this trade. And so she's all high and mighty, and she says, well, how do you know how do I know that you're going to keep your promise? And Aslan, not feeling like he needs to defend himself, turns to her and lets out this mighty roar. Just this mighty, powerful roar from his gut. And the witch is forced to respond and react to it. She immediately sits down, losing all of her power and her dignity that she just created for herself. Everyone starts laughing at her because all he needed to do was simply just roar and let her know, remind her who he is. And I am just kind of reminded of that as I think of how God defends us and how he fights for us. He is who he is, and he will remind us who he is through whatever his roar may be. So moving kind of the back end, and God and Moses, they have this mountaintop experience. Moses got the full meal deal, but the story doesn't stop there, and that's what's the most exciting. The story doesn't stop there. Moses reacts. Moses reacts to this situation. His reaction is fitting and the only reaction that we could have when we truly experience God. Verse 8 says, Moses immediately threw himself to the ground and worshiped. So we're moving to the last part, which is 3 quick questions. do others experience God through us? After we experience God, do others experience God through us? Does my time, I think this is one of your points, with God result in worship of God? Again, verse 8, Moses immediately threw himself to the ground and worshiped. Moses doesn't argue. He's like, hey, God, I get it. Like, you're compassionate, but that's not your forte. Like, there's other things that you could be good at. He doesn't add anything. He's like, hey, you're selling yourself short, God. Like, you're a boss miracle worker. Why don't you throw that one in this cool description? And he doesn't question God. He doesn't say, so does this like mean that you can do this, this, and that? He simply immediately stops what he's doing and throws himself in worship. Moses really had to make this happen. Like, he climbs up, he meets God. Like, Moses comes to the table and God meets him there. This is solo time 101, everybody. Like, this is how you have that time with God. So my question is, does our time yield kind of a humble servant, as Josh said, in awe and reverence of God? Now, I'm not talking about just musical worship like we had from Josh and the group. That was great, but does it yield a life of worship? Does our conversation, does our interactions with God result in us being completely reverent of Him? I look in my life where just God completely blasted me with a lesson, whether it was through kind of grace or mercy or a blessing or a tough time, just very obvious. Hey, this is happening to you. And I leave unfazed by it. It doesn't change my life at all. And the correlation there is that I get in the way. Like, I'm too focused on me to even see what God is doing. I don't take the time to stop and immediately worship God. Moving to our last question, does my life describe God? Near the end of the chapter, it says, when Moses came down Mount Sinai carrying the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant, he wasn't aware that his face had become radiant because he had spoken to the Lord. So when Aaron and the people of Israel saw the radiance of Moses' face, they were afraid to come near him. So Moses goes up the mountain looking like a crayon. He comes down the mountain looking like a highlighter, just completely radiating and glowing with God's presence. Just the imagery that happens there. There's this phrase that we use around the church when there's a passage that is just so blatantly powerful. And it's just the term, that'll preach. Like, that'll preach. That right there says it all. Moses spends time with God, and there's a direct result of his time with God right after. It's unhideable. His time yielded quite the result. So I ask the question, does our time with God make a difference in us? Therefore, does it make a difference in us with other people? Has our time with the Lord changed in such a way where our actions, our demeanor, our character radiate God through us? Matthew 5:16 says this, in the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so everyone will praise your heavenly Father. It's important to note, as I ask the worship team to go ahead and make their way up here, that this change only happens with one thing, and you guessed it, that is Christ transforming our lives, the power of Christ intimately in our hearts. One thing I like to do sometimes is end with a quote that I think when somebody can say something better than I can. And it's from Watchman Nee, and it says this: outside of Christ, I am only a sinner, but in Christ, I am saved. Outside of Christ, I am empty. In Christ, I am full. Outside of Christ, I am weak. In Christ, I am strong. Outside of Christ, I cannot, but in Christ, I am more than able. Outside of Christ, I have been defeated. In Christ, I am already victorious. How meaningful are the words, in Christ? Let's pray.